Well, they're going to cite 144 law professors who say that to even offer the First Amendment argument is frivolous and legally frivolous and shouldn't even be allowed. They're going to argue, they already have, that Jamie Raskin taught constitutional law and he would never accept that argument in his class. Well, I've also taught law and constitutional law and practiced it and litigated more First Amendment cases than anybody in that room. And let me tell you, the First Amendment argument is strong, powerful, overwhelming, and correct. One point about the rest of today. Today, the Democrats really blew it. Maybe now they'll regain their strength. But up to now, today was a complete waste of time. They had made a very effective emotional argument yesterday. And instead of leaving it, they went on and droned on and on and on and repeated what they said yesterday and showed the same things and made the same arguments. You know, lawyers, the first thing you teach a good lawyer is you have to know when to sit down and when to shut up. And the Democrats just didn't know when to sit down and shut up. They would have been much better advised if they had just started today by saying, let's get to the First Amendment issue. Let's anticipate. I'm not sure whether they get rebuttal. If they get rebuttal, then they really shouldn't even raise the First Amendment issue. They should wait until it's raised by the Trump defense and then rebut it. But if they don't get rebuttal, if their arguments are over today and then the defense get the last word, then they have to anticipate it. But already this congressman said, we're just going to do it briefly. There's nothing to the argument. There's no First Amendment argument because all these scholars say there's no First Amendment argument. And Larry Tribe says there's no First Amendment argument. And you name it says there's no. Well, they're all wrong. There is a very, very strong First Amendment argument. And I look forward to seeing how they rebut it. Jamie Raskin's own father, Marcus Raskin, was saved from imprisonment by the First Amendment. He was indicted back in the 1960s for advocating, and they claimed inciting objections to the war and inciting young people to tear up their draft cards and to break into draft centers. I was one of the lawyers who consulted on that case. We won that case on precisely the First Amendment arguments that Jamie Raskin is rejecting. And then Jamie Raskin's father, Marcus Raskin, was part of the Pentagon Papers case. He was the one who took the Pentagon Papers from Ellsberg, who stole them, gave them to the New York Times. He was saved from a felony prosecution by the very First Amendment that Jamie Raskin is now trashing and saying doesn't have any application. You can't say First Amendment for me and my father and not for President Trump. The First Amendment applies to all or to none. There's no distinction based on the Raskins and based on Trump. And remember, Jamie Raskin himself strongly protested the 2016 election. So I don't think they're passing the shoe on the other foot test when it comes to the First Amendment.
I'll be interested to see, and he should be coming up next with his closing, if he brings any of that up, because it's some definitely interesting insight. And you mentioned him against the election in 2016. They're using his words against him when he said, I think Jordan Sekulow said not once but 3 times, used that phrase, fight like hell, which they're coming at the former president with, the times that he used it. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but I was definitely wanting to talk to you about what transpired today, specifically how they brought up Charlottesville again and the very fine people lie, I think in their effort to try to say that this has been cultivated over the years, what transpired at the Capitol, that it was cultivated by the former president through actions that were not taken during certain incidents. I really just couldn't believe that that was brought up.
Well, it should be brought up by the defense because it's very helpful to the Trump defense that this was part and parcel of a 4-year-long political campaign against potential fraud in the election. That's all constitutionally protected. And the other thing, whenever they talk about Charlottesville, they leave out the key statement where he said, fine people on both sides, but I don't mean neo-Nazis or white nationalists. They should be condemned by everybody. And the same way they leave out the phrase peacefully and patriotically. CNN does that, public television does that, and the Democrats, many of them do that as well. So it undercuts their credibility when they leave out critical context. But context helps Donald Trump. It doesn't hurt him. The more you can show that this is part and parcel of a larger political campaign, maybe a wrong-headed campaign, maybe an untruthful campaign, that doesn't matter to the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects people who say the earth is flat as much as it protects people who can prove the earth is round. So there's no truth or falsity under the First Amendment. There are no such things as a true opinion or a false opinion under the First Amendment. So I think today, early on, the Democrats really helped the Trump team, if the Trump team knows how to take advantage of it. I hope they do. I think they will be able to turn that argument against them. Okay.